What's up? Today we're going to talk about great self-control and incredible survivals under such conditions when it was just about impossible to survive. But people in this video could do that. Be sure to watch this video to the end and let's start. The Story of Mowgli. A lot of people know about Mowgli, a child raised by beasts in the jungle. You must have heard of him.
Relax, kid. No need to get worked up, okay?
Or watched a cartoon, or a movie, or even read a book. What about the real story? Of course, this one didn't inspire Kipling, but just imagine a woman who spent most of her childhood in the company of monkeys. Marina Chapman was about 5 years old when she was suddenly kidnapped right from the garden outside her parents' house in Colombia. This happened around 1954, although Marina herself can only give approximate dates. She was one of many children who were then abducted by unknown people. It's not clear what the reason for the abduction was. Maybe the perpetrators wanted ransom, but then suddenly they gave up their plan. Anyway, they didn't want Marina. The little girl was just dumped in the middle of the jungle at night, all alone. It's scary even for an adult to imagine such a thing. Marina would probably have died in a couple of days, but suddenly she had company. Capuchins, small monkeys, took an interest in the human cub, taught Marina to get food and take care of herself. Not on purpose, just by example. They even showed the girl how to heal when she had a stomachache. Over time, Marina began to recognize monkeys by their faces, so to speak. The animals weren't happy or upset that they were joined by a human cub, but the girl was delighted. She felt like she was part of the tribe, learned to climb trees over time, and forgot human speech. Eventually, Marina spent 5 years in the jungle. 5 years eating berries, roots, and bananas. 5 years in the wild, where every day could be her last. Eventually, Marina was found by hunters who brought her back to the human world. There were other problems, of course. The Mowgli girl had a hard time adjusting to normal life. Only at the age of 14, Marina had a foster mother, and then the girl moved to Britain. There, she happily married, gave birth to 2 daughters, and published her autobiography, The Girl with No Name.
A girl has no name.
No, not that girl with no name. 3 days underwater. For many people, the fear of drowning is one of the strongest fears. The story of Harrison Okini ended well, but it doesn't make it any less terrifying. The guy worked as a cook on a small Jackson 4. It's not really a dangerous thing to do, but one day a big storm came up. Waves turned the ship over and sent it to the bottom. This happened about 12.4 miles off the Nigerian coast. 11 crew members died. The tragedy happened at 5 o'clock in the morning. Most likely, no one had ever expected the sea to be so vile. Only Okine survived. He was inside a small air bubble that was gradually filling with water. Everything around him was black and noisy. The guy didn't realize how much time had passed and whether there was even a chance for salvation. He felt hunger, thirst, and intense fear. Also, it was cold. The water temperature at the bottom wasn't pleasant. Besides, the guy was dressed only in shorts and could hardly move. Okine was just waiting and praying, hearing predatory fish eating his friends' bodies. It had been almost 60 hours since the Jackson 4 had been wrecked when the divers reached the ship. They were supposed to get the bodies to the surface, but they knocked on the ship just in case. Imagine their surprise when they heard that somebody knocked back, and it clearly wasn't a barracuda. And when the divers got closer to the poor cook, they thought it was a living dead.
He's alive. Okay,
We don't know if Okene at first thought that the divers were his hallucinations, but they still managed to get the poor cook out of the trap, but he could have absorbed a lethal amount of nitrogen. And to avoid the casein disease, the saved guy was placed in a decompression chamber for 2 days. The very fact that Okene spent so much time at great depth and stayed alive is a real miracle. And I don't think anybody's going to argue with that. Amazing story, isn't it? Haven't you subscribed to the channel yet? We need to fix this now. Survivors in the mountains. One of the most memorable, yet terrifying stories of survival occurred in 1972. The Fairchild FH-227D of the Uruguayan Air Force flew on the Montevideo-Mendoza-Santiago route, but the inexperienced co-pilot began to decline early. As a result, the plane hit a mountain and crashed in the Andes, near the border between Argentina and Chile.
Nando! Wake up! He's opening his eyes.
3 crew members and 8 passengers died immediately, while several others died a little while later due to injuries and extremely low temperatures. It was very cold in the mountains.
The first night was horrible. People screaming, people dying.
And the people didn't have warm clothes or shoes with them, and they didn't have any mountaineering equipment to climb down. Survivors expected to be found, but after 142 hours and 30 minutes of searching, the rescue workers concluded that there was no hope. The search was stopped, and the unfortunate people abandoned in the mountains knew about it. They received information from a small transistor radio. To find themselves in the middle of snow-covered mountains with virtually no food or medicine when the temperature reached minus 22 degrees Fahrenheit, in such a situation, you can lose your mind from horror. These people had to die, but they survived. Of the 45 people on the plane, 16 were able to escape. 2 of them were able to get to the human settlements and bring help to the others. It happened 72 days after the crash. 72 days of icy terror in the middle of mountain peaks. Captured by the Sea. Steve Callahan is an American yachtsman, author of Adrift, 76 Days Lost at Sea. And as you can see, he chose that title for a reason. In the autumn of 1981, Steven sailed out of Newport on a 21-foot sloop, Napoleon Solo. He was going to race, but he dropped out of the race because of the breakage, and then got caught in a big storm. Most likely, at that very moment, the whale rammed the sloop and it went down. Steven had to move on an Avon inflatable lifeboat designed for 6 people. He had navigation charts, a harpoon gun, 2 solar water desalters, and a sleeping bag, as well as a book on high seas survival, and some more things. The current was slowly carrying the raft. Steven was hunting fish and birds, gathering drinking water, and hoping for salvation. But not too much. The man thought that he could only rely on himself. He was exercising, repairing his equipment, and he was ready to do anything not to go crazy from idleness. In 76 days, an entire ecosystem had developed around the raft, which attracted not only birds, but also sharks. Anyway, it was a serious challenge. In the end, Steven was rescued by sailors. The man lost a third of his body weight and was covered in blisters because of the seawater. He was immediately taken to the hospital, but Steven left it the very same night. The yachtsman spent the following weeks recovering on the island and hitching a ride on boats through the West Indies. Amazing man. Despite the harsh ordeals, Steven still enjoys sailing and the sea, and nothing can stop him. The Grand Canyon Test. In August 1975, a 25-year-old girl named Linda Svarna walked across the Grand Canyon with her dog. She just planned to walk to the next village, but accidentally took a wrong turn and she got lost. The Grand Canyon is one of the deepest canyons in the world. It's 277 miles long and 18 miles wide. Anyway, it's not hard to get lost in a place like this, but it's a test that you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy. And suddenly, Linda was without food and water, without a roof over her head, under the burning sun. The temperature was then up to 98 degrees Fahrenheit. At the same time, at night it was dropping to 50 degrees. Add the wild animals here and you have one of the creepiest places in the world. The Labyrinth of Death. For 20 days, Linda was surviving in an environment where any other person would have died long ago. She was tormented by hunger, thirst, hallucinations, and despair. One day, the dog accidentally turned over the container where the girl was collecting water and, afraid of Linda's scream, escaped. Several times, Linda thought of giving up, but continued to fight for life. And it wasn't in vain. In the end, her tracks were noticed by the locals and they managed to track down the lost girl. But the most amazing thing was that they were able to find the dog as well. Whew. Linda and her pet returned home. Trapped. Being inside a shipwreck is not an easy test. Surviving in the middle of snow-capped mountains is worse than that. But sometimes the danger lies in the most unexpected things, like ATVs. Ken Hildebrand did his hunting about 80 miles from Calgary, Canada. He'd done this 1,000 times before, but it didn't go according to plan that day. Ken was riding an ATV and accidentally crashed into a rock. Heavy transport turned over and clamped the man's legs in such a way he couldn't get out. Some levers would have come in handy, but there was nothing suitable. Ken was all alone with the wildlife and his own problems. It's worth saying that wildlife immediately took an interest in the man. Wolves and coyotes were always trying to get close to him. They must have wanted to use Ken as an appetizer. The man chased them away with a loud whistling, but the predators weren't his only problem. Cold, hunger, and thirst just wore Ken out. He literally ate dirt to get at least some moisture. Try to imagine it without nausea. The hunger was so strong that the man tried to eat a beaver he'd caught the day before, but couldn't. His body refused to digest raw, rotting meat. Eventually, Ken was trapped for 96 hours, and he would probably die if it hadn't been for the occasional traveler with a dog who appeared near there. It wasn't the traveler, his dog, or even coyotes who were most surprised by what happened. The director of medical emergency services was shocked. According to him, Ken just shouldn't have survived. Not under these extreme conditions, but he did survive. And here's a funny fact. Ken's wife didn't even know her husband was missing. The hospital staff informed her about the incident. Well, that's it for today. Try to stay away from ATVs in the Grand Canyon. Never give up hope, and remember to like our videos.